Now, a couple of months ago, I treated myself to a Zoom F3 external recorder. I did want to get one at launch, but I don't think a lot got shipped over to the UK. They were kind of out of stock globally for a bit, but we can't really help what's gone on over the past couple of years. But I knew as soon as they were restocked, I was going to pick myself up one. I needed an external recorder for when I'm recording sit-down interviews and webinars and a few other bits and bobs that I do during my day job. And I really wanted something that was going to be quite easy to set up. And when I mean easy to set up, I wanted the 32-bit float, because when I've got to set all the camera stuff up, get all the visual stuff nailed with how they want it to look like, and the marketing department want it to look like, it doesn't give me as much time as I would like to get the audio levels set up. It's very hard when you're doing stuff outside of your elements, or your comfort zone, which is for me, sitting at a desk and making videos. It's quite a lot to take on board. And I just thought the F3 is going to be a really versatile product for me. It's going to just make things a lot easier. At least if I get the levels a bit wrong, it's going to be, easier to fix in post due to that 32-bit float. Although I'm going to talk about my experience with setting levels with this a little bit later in the video. Now, I just thought that I was going to use this as an external recorder, but I'm actually using it right now. I've got a Rycote HC15 plugged into it. I've also plugged in some power-hungry dynamic microphones to it. You can use it as a USB audio interface as well as an external recorder, and can use 32-bit float as a USB interface as well since a firmware update. And I found it to be pretty much the go-to device that I record everything on for my channel and stuff that I do outside of work at the moment. But it's by no means perfect. For £300 to £350, I would say £350 is its full retail price. There are definitely some issues that I have with it. There's some issues, 4 of them that I think we can fix via software, or I can't fix, Zoom can fix. So I'm going to tell you all about those. And I'm also going to tell you about some hardware changes that I would love to see on the Zoom F3. A revised model, maybe a couple of years down the line, that can really turn this into the perfect audio recording product. As you can see there, I've only really had to add 8 on the gain here. These Rycote microphones, anyone that's interested, both the HC15 and the HC22, which I'm going to pick up probably before the end of the year, are fantastic microphones. So both the HC15 and the HC22 use the same capsule, so you're going to get like the same tone out of them. They've got 8.5 dBA of self noise, and the sensitivity is so low on this, so low. If I was plugging this into one of my audio interfaces at this distance anyway, I put about 20 dB of gain into it, and when I've got it boomed just out of frame, I very rarely ever get to 30 dB with this. So yeah, like this microphone. Anyway, went off on a tangent because just wanted to talk about the mic for a little bit. So let's move on to the software changes now. The first one isn't actually a software change. I just didn't want to give it its own category, and that is accessories, or the lack of accessories in this box. I picked mine up, I think, for £295, which I'm happy with. And to be honest, I would have been happy even if I paid £350. But £350 is the retail for the Zoom F3. And you literally get the Zoom F3 in the box. You don't get anything else. And there's 3 accessories that I really do think should be included. And another one we'll talk about at hardware changes later on in the video. So the first one is a 3.5mm audio cable. You don't even get a cable to plug it into your camera in the box. Of course, you're always going to want to use what you've recorded to the SD card, but you can also then record good scratch audio to the camera. Okay, that's one thing you want to do as well. Actually, most recently when I used this, because there's something else that isn't included in it, I was recording and I was holding it with my hand. And I was holding it with my hand because the bottom of the Zoom F3, don't know if you can see that there, the tripod connection is quite far in, meaning that I don't have a little mini magic arm, which is what I'm going to have to order to attach it to my camera cage. And I really do think that they should at least include just a sort of spaced off, is it a hot shoe or a cold shoe, to connect it to your camera. That would be really useful. And I just think if they were going to include anything in the box, that's the one thing that I would want in there. Like, I've got plenty of audio cables, even though I'd like one. But that not being included in the box really does my head in. And the other thing as well that I think they should include in the box, seeming that it was in lots of the marketing material, because the Zoom F3 is so tiny, you've seen it strapped to a boom pole, you've seen it strapped to someone's arm, you can strap it to whatever you want because the thing's tiny. And I just don't understand why they didn't include a couple of Velcro straps in the box. It's really is a no-brainer with me. It should be included, or make a little bundle that's a little bit more money that's got all of those things in it, so I don't have to source each item from 3 separate places. if I can't find them all on Amazon or something. So that's something that I definitely think needs to be included on future models. Over to some actual software changes then, and you can see that on screen now. I am recording to one input and I've got input 2 turned off, but there's still input 2 is on the screen. It's taking up all of that space. Okay. And I think that when you switch to just having one input on, you should have the option so the second input isn't on the screen. As soon as you press one of the buttons that corresponds with it, it can pop it back into place. But you would have more space for seeing the waveform there. It just looks like there's just loads of like dead little circles on there of disappointment on the screen. So yeah, I'd like to see that change. I'd like to just see the screen real estate used, you know, a little bit more. And I'm going to talk about the screen a bit more when it comes to the hardware changes later on in the video. Now, this next one, I'm not too sure if it can be done with software or if it is a hardware issue. And I've seen a lot of other people complain about this in their reviews as well. And I would totally agree with it, that this has a really colored sounding headphone amplifier. It is definitely a bit funky sounding. Sounds a lot more funky on your own voice because it's never nice monitoring to your own voice, but there is definitely some coloration that's been added there. To me, although it's real-time latency and I can hear my own voice as I talk if I had headphones on in real time, it does just sound like when there is a smidgen of latency. It reminded me very much like when I was getting in an argument with Beaking, the streaming company, that their microphone was introducing a bit too much latency that was coloring when you were trying to change all the DSP effects that they were having none of. And it sounds very similar to that. So it's just a smidgen. So you hear it in real time, but there's just this tiny, I don't know, 2 milliseconds or less of latency that colors the headphone amplifier. Now, even when you're not monitoring yourself, it's not the go-to. Like I said, I use this for all of my recording now, and even will record with it in 32-bit float mode straight into the computer. But I don't use it as my main to-go-to audio interface. As soon as I'm done recording, I unplug it, I plug back into one of my other audio interfaces or DACs, and I use that to plug my headphones in to monitor. So it's just something that I think's really let it down. Remember, this is F series. This is their top of the line. So it's not just about how good the preamps are and how good the sound is. There also needs to be, you know, good headphone amplifiers as well. Everything from the entire start to finish experience needs to be premium. Even though this is, you know, one of their cheapest F series, it's cheapest because it's only got 2 microphone inputs. £300 to £350 is a premium price to pay for an audio recording piece of gear. Okay, it's not like £1,000 Mix Pre or something like that, but it's still a good chunk of change for the size it is. I feel like I'm just going to be ranting about this, and I'll probably rant about it at the end of the video as well. But yes, if there is something that they've added in software, which is coloring that headphone amplifier, I'd love to see it resolved. Now, this fourth one, I've got to try not to go on about too much, and it's going to be a controversial topic for me. And this is about setting levels. Like I said, I bought this because I wanted something that I could just plug in, hit record, and I didn't have to worry about setting my levels when I'm not at the house. If not, you know, I always try to aim between that -18/-12 dB. I think when this is set to 8, my peaks go to about -5 dB when I've got it plugged in as an audio interface. Now, each one of these preamps has 2 converters in it, okay? So there is a low gain preamp, which is for recording very high sounds, but you still need to watch out for your microphone's max SPL, okay? And then there is a high gain preamp for capturing very low noises, like ambient noises, things that are really quiet, pin drops, for example, and stuff like that. And there is something that I have realized with this, that you still do kind of need to set some levels a bit. And I know people are probably going to go, no, you're missing the point of 32-bit float. Maybe I am, and maybe I'm not going to be explaining this in the most technical way. But I find that I get better results with this if I have messed around with the microphone first and set some kind of levels, watching it through my computer. So I really do think that this needs dB levels on it. Another example I'm going to tell you is when I wasn't using enough gain. So this was when I was recording the first kind of interview style at work. And at the time, I didn't have a boom pole. So my main plan was to put a Neumann KM185 on the desk, pointing straight up. But then I was told that it'd be nice if the frame was wider and then my microphone was in shot, even though I knew the frame didn't need to be wider and I was going to crop it in afterwards. But that's the look that they were after. I have since taken a little bit more creative control on this stuff after the results that we had. So where I was going to have the microphone, I don't know, maybe just less than a foot away, pointing directly up, coming up this way with a tablecloth on this table that wasn't going to be in shot anyway. I was then almost at 2 foot away, and I didn't really, and I didn't adjust the gain up that much on the Zoom F3. I think I was set at 80 again, and I set it up to 16. The other issue where I messed up as well on actually checking my levels beforehand is that I was using it at the weekend with DT990s, meaning that I had the preamps on the headphone amplifier absolutely cranked. My headphones at work are only 16 ohms, so it sounded like good levels, and I didn't have a dB meter to check on it. So what actually ended up happening when I got that recording back and I listened to it is I'm stood next to my camera, I've got my Ninja V, my Ninja V's got a fan noise on it, and it was picking up loads of the Ninja V fan. I would say the Ninja V was twice the distance away from the microphone capsule as the person was that was talking, but I honestly believe that it was because that I had it set too low. The gain was far too low. So that high gain preamp was working really hard. It was just picking up so much ambient sound. So I went back to the room the next day. I put the camera with the Ninja V on it, getting the fan going. I put the microphone on the table and I sat down. Kept that distance, but I turned the gain up to 64. I did a recording and I did it at 128 because it's just volume levels that you press on the buttons. And there was hardly any of the Ninja V sound there, especially at 128. It was completely gone. It wasn't being picked up. The KM185 is a hypercardioid capsule anyway. Yes, the microphone was still further away than it should have been. Yes, I made some mistakes by not realizing that it was my headphones that was cranked and set in a good level. But do you know what how quick I would have been able to notice that is if I had the Zoom F3 had dB meters on it. Even if it was just a separate screen that you could press, so you could go between, you know, the 32-bit float version and looking at dB meters, I would have been able to tell that straight away, and I wouldn't have had to have reshot that video a few days later. Now, to be honest, I would still take it in its 32-bit mode over it not having 32-bit and those dB meters. If it wasn't possible, I'd be fine with it, because even when I boosted the audio right up, it still sounded really good. And I did use, I think it was Waves Clarity VX to remove it, and that sorted out as well. I'm getting really annoyed because I've realized there's like this light coming through from over there that's bouncing off the top of my head. Anyway, I feel like we've talked about dB meters for enough now, but yeah, I would like to see that in. So this one's kind of like software hardware change before we're going to get to hardware change. So this might be a software one, but it could be a hardware limitation. And that is so you can record internally and use it as USB at the same time. Even if that restricted me from having 32-bit float, if Zoom said it's too much to record internally and send out in 32-bit float, that's fine. But I would still like to have the option, even if it was just record internally 32-bit float, but then output USB at, you know, linear, in its linear mode. I would be perfectly fine with that. And I'd really like to be able to do that, because I did want to use this for some like webinars and stuff like that as well. Well, I'm probably going to send all of that audio to OBS, put some VSTs and processing on, and then output that to the webinar software. But then I don't really want processed audio. I only want processed audio for live. And I wanted a recording, you know, just a raw recording for editing afterwards. Maybe if I put the compressor on too much or overly gated it, you know, just something like that. Something that, you know, is a change that I can make afterwards. So that is one thing that I'd really like to see. Now, over to hardware changes. There was a couple that I did consider that I'm still going to talk about that I don't think should be there. And the first one is a colored screen. This screen's actually really good because you can see it outdoors quite well. They would have to put a really bright little OLED screen on this to see it outdoors. So the fact that it hasn't got a color screen, I am happy with. And the other one is built-in battery. I thought, oh, at this price, it should have a built-in battery. But the problem is if that battery then dies and you don't have another battery bank to power it up and you're on location, you don't want it. So I understand why people that do a lot of location, recording, sound engineering kind of work do actually prefer batteries, because you can get batteries from anywhere. You can have a load of spares recharged in your bag and you could swap them over. So yeah, those were a couple of considerations I thought about, but second chance, probably not worth it. Now, the first hardware change is just an absolute obvious one. Why the hell do I have to buy a Bluetooth dongle to use this with an app? Why on earth in 2022 am I buying a Bluetooth fucking dongle to pair with an expensive product? Just it doesn't matter who you are. Sorry, Zoom, you got the F-bomb for not including Bluetooth in an F-series device is a fucking joke. So yeah, that's definitely something that I think needs to change, even if you just released a slightly, you know, Zoom F3S or F3B for Bluetooth edition and sold it as the same price and discontinued the Zoom F3. That is something that you should be doing. Just really don't understand. I'm not even going to buy that dongle out of principle, and I'm sure that comment's going to come back to kick me in the ass at some point, because I will probably end up buying one, but I'm not happy about it. The next one, again, which I just think is absolutely ludicrous on a device at this price, is that the XLR inputs are just literally for XLR cables. They're not XLR TRS combi jacks. Again, at this price, why can't I go line in on this? Why can't I plug jack plugs into it? It just absolutely blows my mind when I see any audio interface that I see that's just over a certain price and doesn't allow you to, you know, plug 6.35mm jacks into it as well. I just don't. I just honestly, I just get lost. I'm like, why? What have you done? Just like, it's stupid. Put combi jacks on. Everyone else does. Just do it. Why are you trying to be awkward? Next one, hardware change. Like, the thing is tiny. Don't get me wrong. This thing, let's just hold it up for a second. It is tiny. It is really small. But I reckon it could do with being a little bit bigger. I reckon that if they just made it sort of 15-20% bigger and put a bigger screen on it, everyone would be a little bit more happy. It doesn't need that massive Zoom logo right up at the top. And I felt if you expand this out, that would then obviously get that area where you could put some dB meters over the top for people that just want to see what levels they're at with their microphone, and then they're putting the right amount of gain for it. I could have maybe got all that wrong with a 32-bit float, but that's just from my testing. From my testing is that you still need to kind of set your levels a little bit. So bigger screen, definitely something else. And the last one on the hardware changes, just in case it wasn't a software change, sort the headphone output out. It's stopping me from using it as a USB audio interface. Everything else about this device I absolutely love. And I know I've had a good whinge about it there, but I do love this device. It is a product that, you know, unless they release a better one, this is something that I'll use to record audio on for years. Or unless I require something like a Zoom F6 because I want more channels. But I read through the manual and I was like, that's just a bit too much for Troy to be looking at. A bit too many settings for me to get set up when I'm out and about and I'm already doing a camera. So that is why I wanted the Zoom F3, because it's a simple, easy to use audio interface. And even like I said then, I'm not trying to scare you. If you do record it way too low, you can bring it right up and it still sounds decent. Just make sure that you haven't got other things around it that's causing ambient sounds, quiet little ambient sounds. When you've not got it set low enough, it's going to be picking them up a lot more. Okay, this thing would be really good for ASMR, definitely 100%. Ambient recording, Foley, all of that stuff. I can honestly see why this would be, you know, really needed. And again, it's the opposite way around. Having that low gain preamp means that you can go real high. As long as you stay within your microphone's max SPL, you know, you can clip. It doesn't matter. But the thing is, I don't know, I don't run into those instances that often. So maybe I didn't need 32-bit float. Maybe I didn't need it. Maybe I was just being lazy. But would I get rid of it? No. Do I think the preamps sound amazing? Yeah, they do sound really good. Does it work really nice with this little microphone? Yeah, I do like it. Does it work nice with dynamic microphones? High gain microphones? No problems whatsoever. So yeah, a lot of good things and a lot of things to love about it. But those are the things that I would change. I'd be interested if you're a Zoom F3 owner and there's something that I missed. Let me know in the comment section. Anyway, that's it from me today. Make sure you subscribe and I'll be back with some more videos very soon.